I'm Elaine, 24 years old. I'm a master's student, and I've always been the responsible one. My grandmother, she knew it. 5 years ago, when she passed, she left me $40,000. It wasn't just cash, it was a legal trust fund, locked until I turned 25. It was specifically for my education. My 25th birthday was just weeks away. I needed to pay my tuition for the upcoming semester, so I walked into the bank. Just a normal errand. I was excited. I asked the teller for a balance sheet. She printed it and handed it to me. My blood didn't just run cold. It froze. My hearing went distant. I looked at the paper, looked at her, looked back at the paper. It wasn't $40,000. It was $300. $300. I didn't cry. I didn't make a sound. I just saw red. I grabbed that statement, my knuckles white on the paper, and drove straight to my parents' house. They were the trustees. This wasn't a clerical error. This wasn't a mistake. This was theft. My family stole my future to pay for my sister's party. Have you ever been betrayed by the very people who were sworn to protect you? My grandmother. She passed away 5 years ago, and when she left, I think she took the last bit of honesty in our family with her. She was the only one who ever really saw me. She was the only one who seemed to notice the invisible set of rules we all lived by. She saw the dynamic. It was this quiet, constant, unspoken tilt in the household. A tilt that moved every opportunity, every bit of forgiveness, every dollar of spare cash toward my older sister. My sister was the golden child. She was the one who was meant to be seen, to be celebrated, to be given things. And I was the responsible one, the scapegoat, the one who was just expected to understand, to work harder, to not ask for as much, to be mature about it. My role was to be the stable, low-maintenance pillar that held everything up, so they could all focus on her. My grandmother saw it, and she hated it. The will reading was tense. I remember sitting in that stuffy lawyer's office, the air smelling like old paper and leather. My sister was fidgeting. My parents looked somber. I just felt numb. Then the lawyer read her final wishes. It was my grandmother's last act of protection, her final, defiant attempt to level the playing field she knew was broken. For my sister, she left $10,000. A nice gift, enough for a car or a lot of fun. For me, she left $40,000. The difference hung in the air. It felt like a bomb had gone off. $40,000. I saw my sister's face tighten. I saw my mother and father exchange a look, not of joy for me, but of something else. Inconvenience? Resentment? But my grandmother was smart. She had been smart her whole life. She knew what would happen if I got that money at 19. She knew who would happen. She knew my parents, in their drive to appease my sister, would have convinced me to loan it to her. So, mine was locked away in a legal trust. I couldn't touch a single penny of it until I turned 25. And who did she name to protect it? The only people she could name. My parents. They were the trustees. It's funny, that word, trustee. It's not a family word. It's a legal word. It's a position of fiduciary duty. It means they were legally, ethically, and morally bound to protect that money for me, to act in my best interest. It wasn't their money to share. It wasn't their money to borrow. It was my inheritance, intended for my future. I remember my sister's $10,000. It was gone in less than a year. A down payment on a flashy car, trips I knew she couldn't afford, a whole new designer wardrobe. Poof, gone. And no one batted an eye. No one lectured her. No one told her to be responsible. That was just her. That's what she did. But my $40,000? I protected it. Even though I couldn't touch it, I protected its purpose. I lived frugally. I worked part-time jobs all through my undergrad, paying for my own books, my own car insurance. I built my entire future around that promise. That $40,000 was my master's degree. It was my launch pad. It was the 2 years I would get to focus on my studies without drowning in student loan debt. It was the future my grandmother saw for me, the one she specifically, legally, tried to secure. For 5 years, I lived with that security. It was a light at the end of the tunnel. I knew that when the time came, that money would be there. It was more than a number on a page. It was my grandmother's final gift. Her last way of saying, "I see you. I believe in you. I am on your side. Go build your life." My parents were the guardians of that gift. They were the ones who sat right there in that lawyer's office, heard him explain the terms of the trust, and nodded. They accepted the responsibility. They accepted the trust. My sister is 26. And in our family, she was a fact of life, like gravity or the sunrise. She always got what she wanted. It was the central, unspoken rule of our household. My role was to be the responsible one. Her role was to be the celebrated one. When she got engaged, it wasn't a day before the demands began. It wasn't enough to be happy. It wasn't enough to have a nice, simple ceremony. No, she didn't just want a wedding. She deserved a spectacle. She deserved a production. She wanted the fairy tale, and she expected demanded that our parents pay for it. The designer dress, the massive historic venue, the hundreds of guests, the 10-tier cake, the open bar. I watched all this happen, silently, from the sidelines. That was my job, to be invisible, to nod along and not make waves. The numbers she was throwing around were staggering. The total budget was climbing past $30,000. $30,000. I knew my parents didn't have that kind of money. I knew it. The atmosphere in the house grew thick and heavy and stressed. The arguments started. I'd hear them late at night, at the kitchen table, their voices low and sharp. I'd catch words, deposits, vendors, non-refundable. How are we supposed to? They were running themselves ragged. They looked exhausted, and I felt this rising, swirling dread. Not for me, my money was safe, I thought, locked away, protected. No, I felt this dread for them. I watched them mortgaging their peace of mind for her perfect day, and all I felt was this profound, crushing invisibility. Because in the middle of all this financial panic, I would try to bring up my future. Hey, just a reminder, my tuition deadline is coming up in a few months. We need to plan for the trust fund access. It was like I had spoken in another language. I'd get a wave of the hand, a sharp look from my mother. Not now. We're busy. We have the wedding to deal with. My master's degree. My years of planning. My future. It wasn't just a low priority. It was an interruption. It was an inconvenience. My sister's wedding? That was the main event. That was the family priority. My boring, practical education? That was just school. They were cornered. They had a demanding golden child on one side and a mountain of bills on the other. And somewhere, in the back of their minds, they remembered the key, the solution. The $40,000 sitting in my account. The withdrawals started about 2 months before I went to the bank. Secretly. My parents, my trustees, the people legally responsible for protecting my education fund, took the path of least resistance. They logged into my account. They saw my $40,000, and they saw an easy solution to their problem. They saw my future as their slush fund. They started making payments, a deposit here, a vendor there. They funneled my future into her party. They took my $40,000, the money meant for my master's degree, the money my grandmother died to protect for me, and they laundered it. They laundered my grandmother's legacy right into my sister's flower arrangements and catering bills. It was theft by 1,000 cuts, 1,000 withdrawals, each one a betrayal, each one authorized by the 2 people in the world who were supposed to have my back. All so my sister could have her $30,000 spectacle. I walked into that bank 3 days before everything exploded. It was just a normal afternoon. The bank was sterile, polished, the air conditioning hummed, making it feel 10 degrees colder than the street outside. It was quiet, that awful, respectable bank quiet where you can hear the click of keyboards and the soft whir of the cash-counting machines. I was nervous, but it was a good nervous. I was excited. For 5 years, that trust fund had been this abstract concept, a promise for the future. Now, With my 25th birthday and my tuition both due, it was finally real. I was about to access the gift my grandmother left me. I was going to walk out of there and pay for my master's degree. Clean. No debt. Just freedom. I walked up to the counter. The teller was a nice woman with a polite, neutral smile. I gave her my ID, my trust account details. "Hi," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'd like to check the balance on this account, please." She typed, "Click, click, click." "And," I added, "I'm going to need to arrange a withdrawal for my tuition." She nodded, still typing. Then, she paused. She looked at her screen, tilted her head slightly, and typed again. "All right," she said. She turned the little monitor on her desk to face me. "Here is your current balance." I looked, and the world just stopped. My hearing went distant. The humming of the AC faded into a high-pitched ringing in my ears. I couldn't breathe. My stomach dropped, not like in a roller coaster, but like it had been surgically removed. The number on the screen wasn't $40,000. It was $300. $300. I stared at it. Waiting for the numbers to change, for the real balance to pop up. This was a mistake. It had to be a mistake. $300? I whispered. My voice sounded strange, far away. The teller's smile was gone, replaced by a look of cautious pity. "Yes, ma'am." $300 and 12 cents. My hands started to shake, a tremor that began in my fingertips and raced up my arms. "No," I said. "No, that's wrong. That's impossible. There's supposed to be $40,000 in this account." The teller's face tightened. "I can only show you what's in the system, ma'am. The balance is $300. I need a printout," I stammered. "A full transaction history. For the last 6 months, please." She nodded, her professionalism a wall I wanted to scream at. She hit a few keys and the printer next to her started to hiss and spit out paper, page after page. She handed me the stack. It was still warm from the printer. I forced my eyes to focus. I saw the withdrawals. Not one. Dozens. $500 here. $2,000 there. 1000,000. 1,500,000. Withdrawal. 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 All recent. All within the last 2 months. And next to every single one, the authorization. Authorized by trustee. Authorized by trustee. Authorized by trustee. My parents. My knees felt weak. I grabbed the counter to hold myself up. They had bled it dry. They had systematically, deliberately, and legally, as trustees, gutted my entire future. I walked out of that bank. I don't remember the walk. I just remember the bright sunlight hitting my face and feeling nothing but ice. I was clutching that statement, that stack of papers. It wasn't a bank statement. It was a death certificate, the death of my trust, the death of my faith in my family, and I knew exactly where I had to go. I don't remember the drive. I just remember my hands gripping the steering wheel, the stack of bank statements on the passenger seat. 2 days. It had been 2 days since I'd been to the bank. 2 days of my mind just breaking. I parked. I walked up to the house I grew up in. The door was unlocked, like always. I didn't knock. I walked straight through the hall, into the kitchen. My parents were both there, at the table, drinking coffee, like it was any other afternoon. I slammed the stack of papers down on the kitchen table. The coffee mugs jumped. "Where?" I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Is my $40,000? My mother looked up, her face pinched. Not with guilt, not with shame. She looked annoyed, like I had interrupted her. "What are you talking about?" she said. "This," I said, hitting the top page with my finger. The printout. The one showing withdrawal after withdrawal. My trust fund. My $40,000. It's gone. It's $300. You are the trustees. So I'm asking you, where is it? My father sighed. He took his glasses off, rubbed his eyes. "Honey, lower your voice." "No, I will not lower my voice. Where is my money?" Then, the gaslighting started. The classic, well-worn script of our family. My mother put her mug down. "We are a family," she said, her voice dripping with fake patience. "And we share." I just stared at her. Share? Share? That wasn't sharing. That was my inheritance. That was my tuition. My father chimed in, his voice firm, like he was scolding a child. Your sister needed it. Needed it. That word. It detonated in my chest. Heat flooded my face, my neck, my hands curled into fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. Needed it? Needed it? For what? For a party? For a dress and some flowers and a caterer? She needed that? I needed it for my education. I needed it for my future. The one I had worked for, the one my grandmother explicitly left me that money to build. How? How could they sit there and tell me her want was a need? But my need was… What? Nothing? You're 24, my father said, waving his hand, dismissing me. Dismissing my entire life. You're young. You can make it back. Make it back? I felt the floor drop out from under me. They were admitting it. They weren't even sorry. They were justifying it. They had looked at my $40,000, looked at my sister's party, and made a choice. They had dismissed my future. They had dismissed my grandmother's will, her legal binding will. They had dismissed their own fiduciary duty. They had committed a crime, and they were telling me to just make it back? That wasn't sharing, I said, my voice shaking now, but not with sadness, with rage. That was a trust fund, a legal document. You didn't borrow it. You stole it. You stole from me. My mother actually rolled her eyes. Oh, stop being so dramatic. It's just money. You're ruining the happiest time of your sister's life. Dramatic. I was being dramatic. I looked at these two people, my parents, and I didn't recognize them at all. I left their house. I don't remember getting in my car. I just remember sitting in my driveway for an hour, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, replaying that conversation. We are a family, and we share. Your sister needed it. You can make it back. I was shaking. I was hollowed out. But there was one last piece. One last person. The next day, I called my sister. Part of me, this tiny, stupid, naive part of me, was praying. Praying she didn't know. Praying our parents had done this for her, but not with her. Maybe. Maybe if I told her, she would be horrified. Maybe she would join me. Maybe she would march over to our parents and demand they fix it. How stupid I was. She picked up on the third ring, her voice bright and bubbly. Hey, are you finally calling to talk about your bridesmaid dress? The fitting is… Did you know? I cut her off. My voice was flat, cold. The bubbly tone vanished. What are you talking about? Mom and Dad, the trust fund, my $40,000. They took it. They gave it to you for the wedding. Did you know? There was a pause, a dead, heavy silence on the line, and in that silence I got my answer. They didn't give it to me, she finally said, her voice sharp, defensive. They loaned it to us. It's not a big deal. It's not a big… It was $40,000, Sarah. It was my entire education fund. They drained it to $300. How am I supposed to pay for school? Then, she laughed. It was a short, sharp, ugly sound. Disbelief. Seriously? That's what you're worried about? I'm getting married, she said, spitting the words like they were obvious. You're just going to school. I couldn't form words. My brain just stopped. The casual dismissal. The absolute, breathtaking contempt. Just going to school. As if my future, my career, my life, was nothing compared to her center aisle fantasy. That was my money. I finally choked out. You're paying for your wedding with my stolen money. Oh my God, she snapped, her voice turning mean. Why are you being so selfish? It's a wedding. It's the most important day of my life, and you're trying to ruin it over some money. Selfish. Selfish. My parents steal $40,000. My sister knowingly spends it, and I am the selfish one for wanting it back. I was dizzy. The gaslighting was so total, so absolute, it felt like the walls were bending in. They were a unified front. They had their story, and I was the villain. I don't remember what I said. I think I just hung up. And then… the real assault began. Within an hour, my phone exploded. It was a coordinated attack. Aunts, Uncles, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, text after text, voicemail after voicemail. How dare you upset your sister like this? Your parents gave you everything, and this is how you repay them? It's just money. You are tearing this family apart. They called me materialistic. Materialistic, for wanting my own inheritance, for expecting my parents, my trustees, not to commit a felony against me. They weren't just defending my sister, they were demanding I apologize to her, demanding that I show up to the wedding paid for with my stolen future, and smile, and pretend it was all okay. They told me to get over it, to be a good daughter, to be a good sister, to just let them get away with it. I sat on my floor, my phone buzzing on the carpet like a live grenade, and I felt something in me finally break. I was in my apartment, on my floor. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating on the carpet. Text after text, a flood of harassment from people whose numbers I barely recognized. Selfish. Materialistic. You're ruining your sister's big day. Family is forever. Money isn't. They were right about one thing. Family is forever, and I would forever be the daughter they stole from, the sister they betrayed. I picked up the phone. My thumbs were steady. All the shaking, all the crying. It was gone. I opened a group text to my parents and my sister. My fingers typed out the words, clear and simple. Since you stole my $40,000, I will not be attending the wedding. Do not contact me again. I hit send. That was my first decisive action. My first real boundary. I didn't just hang up. I locked the door. I turned my phone off. The sudden silence in my apartment was deafening and beautiful. I slept for 10 hours. When I woke up 2 days later, the anger was gone. The hysteria was gone. It had all burned away, and what was left was ice. Cold, hard, and clear. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This wasn't a fight over money. This was a crime. My grandmother knew. That's why she set up the trust. She saw this. She saw them. She tried to build a legal wall to protect me, and my parents had taken a sledgehammer to it. I wasn't just going to make it back. I was going to honor her. I booked a consultation with a lawyer. I walked into her office. It was quiet, professional. The walls were lined with thick, leather-bound books. It was the safest I had felt in weeks. I sat down, and I didn't cry. I laid it all out. The will. The trust documents, naming my parents as trustees, and the bank statements, page after page after page of them, the evidence of the theft. I told her the story, calmly, factually. They say I'm being selfish. They say my sister needed it. They say I'm just going to school. She listened. She read. Her face didn't change, but her eyes got sharper. When I finished, she folded her hands on her desk and looked right at me. And she said the words that saved me. What your parents did is not a family dispute. It is highly illegal. She validated everything. She explained the law. My parents weren't just parents. They were my trustees. They had a legal, fiduciary duty to protect that money. This, she said, tapping the bank statement, is a massive breach of fiduciary duty. This is misappropriation of funds. This is, flat-out, theft. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 5 years. She asked me, "What do you want to do? This is your call." There was no hesitation. The ice in my veins was solid. This was the snap. This was the moment the old me died and the new one stood up. "Get it back," I said. "Get it all back." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She drafted the demand letter. It was the most beautiful, terrifying thing I had ever read. It was addressed to my parents, as trustees, and to my sister, as the recipient of the stolen funds. It cited the specific laws they had broken: breach of fiduciary duty, theft. It demanded the immediate repayment of the full $40,000. And it laid out the consequences if they failed to comply: a civil lawsuit to freeze their assets, and she would forward the file to the district attorney to pursue criminal charges. She looked at me one last time. "Are you sure? This is a war. You won't be able to take this back." "I know," I said. "Send it." That demand letter wasn't a warning shot. It was a tactical strike. It landed. And the silence that followed was immediate. The non-stop harassment from my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, it just stopped. Dead. Like a switch had been thrown. The word criminal charges tends to do that. My parents, who had been so arrogant at their kitchen table, were now terrified. They were staring down the barrel of a lawsuit that would freeze their assets. They were facing prosecution. They had been playing a game of emotional blackmail. I had just responded with the full force of the law. And my sister? Her $30,000 fairy tale? It was built on my stolen $40,000. And with that demand letter, the bank of mom and dad was officially closed. The final payments to the caterer, the venue, the florist. They couldn't be made. My parents were scrambling, trying to find a way to pay me back, not the vendors. 1 week after my lawyer sent that letter, just days before the most important day of her life, the wedding was canceled. Not postponed, canceled. Publicly, humiliatingly. All those guests had to be uninvited. All those non-refundable deposits, gone. The entire spectacle, the one my sister valued more than my future, dissolved into nothing. The aftermath was quiet. But I heard what was happening. My sister was furious, absolutely ballistic. But not at our parents, who had lied and stolen for her. She was furious at me. For ruining her wedding. My parents were in a panic, trying to liquidate assets, trying to find a way to pay me back to make the lawsuit and the criminal charges go away. The power dynamic had shifted so completely, it was seismic. They weren't the ones telling me what to do anymore. I sat in my apartment. It was quiet. My phone was silent. The harassment was over. The gaslighting was over. I looked at my laptop. I pulled up the student loan application for my first semester. It wasn't the future I had planned, but the lawsuit would take time. I didn't care. I filled out the forms. I clicked submit. I was enrolling in my master's program. I was going to pay my tuition, and I was going to walk into that classroom. I was honoring my grandmother. I was doing it on my own terms, funded by my own resilience. It was the first moment of real, profound peace I had felt in months. My biological family. They taught me a very hard lesson. They taught me that sometimes the people who share your blood are the first ones to betray you. They taught me that words like family can be weaponized, used as a club to beat you into submission. My mother was right about one thing. We are a family. They were. They were a unit. A unit that had decided, together, that I was the one who could be sacrificed. But I found my real family. My grandmother was my first found family. She saw me. She tried to protect me, even after she was gone. My lawyer? She was my second. She was the one who listened, who validated me, who handed me the steel I needed to fight back. They taught me that family isn't about obligation or guilt. It's about respect. It's about protection. It's about showing up. I learned that setting a boundary isn't an act of war, it's an act of survival. I chose my future over their feelings. I chose my education over her party. I chose myself, and I would do it again. If you know what it's like to have to choose yourself over the people who were supposed to choose you, hit subscribe and join a community that understands.